A new study out of India found that 57% of the people living in the slums of Mumbai have already had COVID-19. That's over 5 million people. Look at this aerial photo of Mumbai. On the lower half of the screen are the slums where an estimated 9 million people live. On the upper half, where the wealthier people live, only 16% have had the virus. So social distancing does slow the spread of a disease. That's true. But it really doesn't matter because even though 5 million people in the slums of Mumbai have had the coronavirus, very few have died. And that makes me think about what's going on here in our country. We know that they've been lying about how many people have actually died from COVID-19 here in the United States. But I wanted to find out just how bad it is. So I started looking into the numbers of deaths we've had in the nursing homes due to COVID. Our best estimate is around 42% of all COVID deaths have been people in nursing homes. So using their numbers, that's around 65,000 deaths over 4 months. To get some perspective, I researched and found that 52% of all people who move into a nursing home die within the first 6 months. At any given time, there are about 1.4 million people living in nursing homes. So 65,000 nursing home residents dying in 4 months isn't that crazy. Also using their numbers, 80% of COVID deaths have been people over the age of 65. So to get some perspective there, I looked up how many seniors die in America every year. That number is just over 2 million. That's an average of around 171,000 retirees kicking the bucket every month. So that means roughly 700,000 seniors should have died over the past 4 months. And the reported numbers are that 120,000 seniors have died from COVID-19 over the past 4 months. And they want us to believe that's in addition to the typical 700,000 that normally die. Somehow, I doubt it. They're essentially telling us that we should fear a virus that mainly only kills people who are literally on their deathbeds. Most people who die have comorbidities, things like high blood pressure or diabetes. In the U.S., there will be about 500,000 people who die from hypertension this year. And when one of those people gets sick with something like the flu or the coronavirus, they tend to die because they were barely hanging on in the first place. Virtually no children are dying from this disease. Now, why do you think that is? Because it kills very few people who aren't already very sick with something. So it's not really what's killing a lot of these seniors who are dying with hypertension and diabetes. They were already dying. But once they die, they're getting counted as a COVID death. As far back as March 26th, Dr. Fauci, the director of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, Dr. Clifford, the deputy director for clinical research and special projects under Dr. Fauci, and Dr. Redfield, the director of the CDC, wrote an editorial for the New England Journal of Medicine. Here's part of what they said. Quote, "If one assumes that the number of asymptomatic or minimally symptomatic cases is several times as high as the number of reported cases, the case fatality rate may be considerably less than 1%. This suggests that the overall clinical consequences of COVID-19 may ultimately be more akin to those of a severe seasonal influenza, which has a case fatality rate of approximately 0.1%, or a pandemic influenza, similar to those in 1957 and 1968, rather than a disease similar to SARS or MERS, which have had case fatality rates of 9 to 10% and 36% respectively." Unquote. 4 months ago, Dr. Fauci was comparing COVID-19 to the flu. But if we do that, we're quickly told it's nothing like the flu. But as we see with the study done in India, it is comparable to the flu. They report around 35,000 deaths due to COVID-19 in their country. But just in the slums of Mumbai, antibodies testing suggests that there have been over 5 million people who've had it. So if the 35,000 deaths only happened in those slums, that alone would be a survival rate of 99.3%. Now, when you take into consideration that India has a population of over 1.3 billion people, it really shows you how not worried most of us should be. We know that the criteria here in America is that anyone who is assumed to have it or test positive at the time of their death is counted as a COVID death. But think about how absurd that is. If an old man who has heart disease dies in a car crash, we would never attribute his death to heart disease. Or if that same person had a cold and went to the hospital because he felt ill and later died, we wouldn't say he died from the common cold when his heart stops beating. That criteria was written the way that it was so they could have the highest possible number of deaths attributed to the coronavirus. Why? Why wouldn't they want to know the true number of deaths caused by COVID-19? 4 months ago, I said this in a video called Panic Politics. Those Democrats in Washington want this coronavirus situation to be as bad as it can be. They want us to panic. They want it to disrupt our lives. They want it to hurt the economy, and they want people to get sick. They actually need people to get sick. And nothing has changed. Most people who are counted as having died from the coronavirus actually died from a serious illness like heart disease or diabetes. And I think that's why Governor Cuomo in New York and the Democrats in general don't feel bad about all of the thousands of people they introduced the virus to in nursing homes. In their minds, they were dying anyways, and it's all for the greater good. We may never know what the true case fatality rate is because of the political value this crisis has. And the only way it can be a crisis is if a lot of people die. So they have to inflate the numbers as much as they can. And they're doing it for one reason, and one reason only. Democrats only have one goal, and that's getting rid of Donald Trump. And they don't care if the economy has to suffer, and they don't care if you have to suffer. All they care about is getting the power back onto their side of the aisle. I said that 4 months ago, and that's still the simple truth. Thanks for watching. If you like this video, subscribe to our channel, and if you want to become a supporting member of Blue Collar Logic, click on the link in the description and give what you can.